We only really started competing away from Tortola, I think it was like 1999, no, 1999 or 2000.
Maybe
we first went to St.
yeah.
Martin, because the St. Martin regatta was the be-all and end-all of multi-hull racing. And so we sort of were noticed when we started going there 99, 2000, and then pretty much every year after that when we could, miss very few. Irma was 2 years ago. Well, I mean, she was actually on a ball just here, literally not 200 yards away from where we are now, where the Marine Max docks are right now. And it was not the mooring that failed. I mean, we have a picture of her in the eye, and she'd parted the mooring and was upside down behind you about 100 yards against the bulkhead.
Still in one piece.
Still with 3 hulls, but upside down and mast on. And presumably in round 2, because she ended up on the bridge just on the entrance to the peninsula. So in round 2, we assumed she just got blown back across the marina basin there, missing a couple of boats that were still intact on their moorings, and then got blown out onto the road. Sort of must have done a flip, because she was upside down on the road and she was upside down in the water, so I don't know quite how that happened, but yeah, pretty violent.
Yeah, so damage wise, this port hull here had a complete fracture inboard here and was just sticking out to port like a broken leg, really. And we subsequently cut it off and have reattached it. The deck still needs to be fixed.
And we did all that while she was still upside down.
Yeah, that was...
Because the initial recovery after Irma was just a case of lifting the boat up while still upside down and moving her to a place that was out of the way of the road. Initially we wanted to launch her at that point, but when she was lifted up, moving swiftly onto this hull, or sponson, this one actually fell off.
Yeah.
And then you get into the real violence of Irma, because her mooring lines were actually wrapped around the beam here. So a 1-inch line wrapped around twice at this point, exactly there. And I guess, before, well, she had to have broken this. The mooring line just went through the beam. And the glass fibre is like over 1/4 of an inch thick here in a I-beam structure. So it's extreme violence. To see that happening must have been quite interesting. Of course, after that happened, the whole boat was sort of sideways to the wind, and it must have just gone downhill from there.
Yeah, I mean, once this front beam failed, then it was inevitable that the back beam would also fail, and so yeah, this armour was completely off. We spent many sleepless nights wondering about how we were going to join the boat back together again, and as usual, you don't get a result until you try something, and Rich and Mike Hurst built this amazing cradle for the starboard sponson here, and with some jiggling and wiggling and wedging and ooching, some boatyard stands, we managed to get her, I think, to within millimeters of where she was. We actually know, because we deliberately didn't grind away certain glass fiber artifacts where the vessel broke, and you can see where the laminates were actually shattered. Some of those have been ground away now.
Can you tell he's a surveyor now?
So yeah, she's super close to where she was.
But I mean, before we get any further into hurricane season this year, we really want to get this sponson reattached to the aft beam and the forward beam that you just saw. And while we're doing that, we're actually finding that we're pretty confident that we can actually attach in it, so she's stronger than she was originally. I mean, we don't want to downplay the builders in 1979, but we, with modern epoxies and with just the way we've opened her up, and we can actually see better ways of attaching her. We're very, very confident she will be at least as strong. In fact, we're worried about making her too strong, because then you create a hard spot in the boat. She's quite a flexible boat overall, and we have to be mindful of that. I mean, here we are looking at the top section of the aft beam coming down to the sponson, and what we found, almost sort of to our horror, is that there was very little bonding. This, especially this section here, of what is structural aft beam to the actual sponson. It was just sort of very loosely tabbed onto the deck here. So by cutting away these access panels here and here, we're going to be able to add a lot more structure than she had originally. And then when we're done, we'll be able to put these panels back in to form the deck. I mean, it all looks a bit shaky now, but it's actually a process that, you know, we're pretty happy that we understand. Bleak though it looks. What you're looking at here is kind of where the coach roof used to be, and obviously it's very much gone. It was always a project that we were going to get onto because it was made of inferior core than the rest of the boat, and so we were always mindful that that was going to come up. But we're going to reshape it to have a sort of more modern look to the boat. We were considering having a sort of well here, roughly where you're standing right now filming us, and having the well sort of going like a big box in the middle of the boat, so the crew could actually be stationed right there doing the winches and, you know, a bit America's Cup style. But we've actually gone against that now because we want to keep her intact as offshore capable, and having a big swimming pool in the middle of your boat isn't the best idea if you ever get swamped with tons of water. So yeah, we've gone away from that. But this actually looks daunting, but it is quite a straightforward project to make a nice dome on top of it.
Yeah, for some reason best known to the original builders of the boat, they used some of this core here for the deck material, and it's way inferior to the stuff that they used in the hull panels. Fortunately for Triple Jack, otherwise she wouldn't still be here. And so a large part of this coach top deck or roof that we are now replacing was cored with this, and it's a great thing for us to get rid of. We're happy that it's going to be gone. The boat's going to be much stiffer and much better for getting rid of this particular material, which in the early days of trimaran building probably nobody knew anything about, right? The technology has come way on, and probably nobody knew actually how good the Airex material, which is this, that the hull was made of, and you know, you can pretty much guarantee that was it Frank that built this boat? Frank built this boat. He never would have, in his wildest dreams, thought that Triple Jack would still be a going concern 40 years later. So this is still, I think, an amazing core material, because it can bend, it can take extreme stresses without actually delaminating, and it must just have an amazing bond strength with the polyester resin that they used at the time, which is absolutely cannot be said for this. So yeah, we're getting rid of to cut a long story short, we're getting rid of a lot of the weak spots in the boat that you know, we couldn't or hadn't done over the years, and she's going to be better than ever.
The foredeck is interesting. Over the years we've replaced sections of deck which were that same crumbly material. So we've done this section here, the section here, this section here, a little bit where that cleat was way back when there was a hurricane in Exmouth actually, and she parted her mooring because the cleat just got ripped out of the deck. But here was a large size 80 Lumar hatch, which was great for getting sails down, but on the outside of it was this same nasty old core. And just to illustrate how important, there, can you see that movement?
Okay.
Okay. Can you see that deck boot?
Mm-hmm.
There we are. The whole. You've got to remember the forestay is attached right behind me, and it just shows you how important decking is, because it sort of completes that rigid structure of the hull. And so when we put our new deck back here, we won't be putting a whopping great size 80 hatch in there. We'll be strengthening up this area considerably, you know, for rigging loads. So that will be a big improvement.
So, plans going forward, what's happening?
Well, this is a very interesting question and a very difficult one to answer, because there are a lot of known unknowns. These projects are hard to predict in terms of their completion, but you know, we're here, we're committed, we're here every Sunday and every Tuesday night. There's things that take frustratingly long, and then suddenly you make great steps in a very short period of time. So I guess our goal is to be doing the Nanny Key Spring Regatta 2020. If we can get the boat in the water before that and shake her down, we sure will. The icing on the cake lately has been that we've acquired a beautiful carbon mast.
I had to pay for it.
We had to pay for it, yeah. But
which is a first.
But it is an inspiration for us to know that TJ, when we finish this job, the icing on the cake, as I said, will be a carbon spar that original builders could never have even dreamed about, because it came off a high-tech race boat, and you know who you are, and thanks for doing that for us.
And the real icing on the cake, if we get all of that done, the mast in the boat and launch for pre-Spring Regatta and actually sell the Spring Regatta, the real icing on the cake is that a week after the Spring Regatta, it's the St. Bart's Regatta.
Yeah, well,
and
it's racing.
Off we go.
Racing is the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to close out, you know, this boat's it's an amazing story of you know, unlikely triumph over adversity. It's unlikely that she's still here after 40 years, and you know, it's a story of friendship. It's a story of adventure. It's a story of sailing, and you know, without Cameron and Miles from Nanny Key, none of it would have been possible. So we really need to thank them very much for their continued support and sponsorship of the boat.
Totally.
Yeah. And the adventure goes on.